So today we're servicing this 96, I think, Quadra. This video only applies to the Quadra 5s. As you can see on the bottom of the legs, there are no logos. If you have a Quadra 21 or a 10, it's going to say 21 or 10 at the bottom. And I will be making videos for those in the future, but this one is just for the 5. So yeah, let's go. Alright, and some tools you're going to need are obviously an adjustable wrench, some vice grips. If you need one of these, you definitely need one of these. You cannot take this fork apart without one of these. You'd need a long 5mm Allen wrench and an 8mm wrench if you want. Yeah, so the long 5mm Allen wrench is only to take off the lowers. So if you want to take off the lowers, you're going to need one of these, but otherwise you can take the elastomers out and you'll be all good to go. So before you start, just go ahead and loosen the top caps all the way. This just releases extra pressure and it'll make it easier to pull off the top caps. Now go ahead, grab your wrench and take off the top caps. You could use a socket and a wrench. I think it's a 21mm, but I'm not sure, but these came off pretty easy, so I'm just going to be using the wrench. Alright, now with the top cap's off, what you can do is just grab the fork, flip it upside down, and they should bounce out of there pretty easy. Alright, so after we took up the elastomers, I'm going to go ahead and take off the arch. Alright, so after you got your arch off, you want to grab your lower and push it all the way up like this, like I have it here. Alright, so now as you can see, there's a stopper down there, and past that you're going to find your bolt. So get your long Allen wrench and try to stick it through there. Okay, so once you get your Allen key down in there, make sure it's all nice and solid. You get a vice grip, just put it on here. And then, in order to get some leverage, it'll be pretty hard. So what I did is I got a big screwdriver, put it in here, and use that as leverage. You could put the arch back on, but it might be kind of sketchy. Alright, once you get it loosened, then you can just put the vice grip up like this and twist the stanchion to loosen it. Alright, and after you've unscrewed it enough, the stanchion will pretty easily just slide on off. And finally, with the lowers off, now you can just grab this top out bumper and it should slide out from the top. Or you could also remove this clip from the bottom of the stanchion if you want to remove your bottom out spring. Alright, now everything's all taken apart, and let's talk about some cleaning and inspecting. First of all, you may have noticed that this fork doesn't actually have any seals. This is actually normal. I looked at the original manual and it does not have any seals. So these boots are the only thing that protecting the stanchions from any dirt. So you want to make sure those are all clean. And number two, you want to measure your elastomer rods. You want to make sure they're at least 5.8 inches long. Otherwise, you won't be getting enough travel out of your fork. And the rest of the parts, just make sure you clean them down nice and good. These might have a little bit of rust on them. I wouldn't worry about it too much. But yeah, make sure you get the elastomers and the inside of the fork and the stanchions all nice and clean. Now for the arch and the lowers, I'm going to be using some wax just to protect them from the sun, and especially magnesium corrosion. You want to avoid that as much as you can. Alright, so when cleaning out the lowers, you want to make sure to just get those two bushings, those two sets of bushings, and then you see you have the bottom out bumper way down there and the hole where the bolt threads in. Speaking of the bolts, I will be replacing these old rusty bolts because they're very stripped and rusty. These ones are a bit longer, but I already tested and they work. So yeah, feel free to replace those with some longer ones. Alright, now for the boots, I'm just going to clean them off with some water and a toothbrush. And the inside, make sure you just wipe this off with some alcohol to protect the stanchions. Alright, so the part you really want to get clean are of course the stanchions. For this, you can just use some brake cleaner for the outside. And for the inside, I like to get a screwdriver like this and wrap a paper towel around it and then just kind of stick it in there and clean it out nice and good. I would focus on the bottom part more because that's where the little stopper actually slides up and down in the fork. And the top part, you can do it as well, just make sure there's no big debris up there. Alright, so now everything's all nice and cleaned down. I'm just going to polish the crown real quick, and since this is just a Quadra, I don't want to put too much time into it. I'm going to try out this white diamond polish and see how it goes. Alright, now it's all polished down. It looks pretty good. I should have probably sanded it first, but hey, it'll do for now. Alright, so now we've finally got everything all cleaned down, all waxed down, ready to go. For the lowers, I used these turtle wax rubbing compounds, and of course I put the wax on top. Alright, so now I want to talk about replacement parts. For this, there's only the elastomers, and you want to make sure don't get overcharged for these, because these are just polyurethane rods. There's nothing special about them. There's no holes in the middle. They're not chopped up in a certain way. You can find these online. If you could search up a 3/4 inch rod, I couldn't find any right now, but if you look in the future, there could be some available. And they usually come in like a really long rod, so you can cut it down obviously, and you want it to be around 6.5 inches to 6 inches, depending on how much travel and stiffness you want. You could also buy some new old stock ones if they have them. And for in my case, the green ones are the hard ones, the medium ones are red, and the blue ones are soft or purple. There's also a set on suspensionforkparts.com for $50, which is the 93 model. But you know, if there's nothing else, I guess you have to buy those. And of course, those can be cut down if they're too long. Putting the fork back together, you're going to need some things like grease. You can use bearing grease. Ideally, you want to use SRAM butter. I don't have that at the moment. Or you could use this stuff called Slick Honey. It's made specifically for forks. This grease is perfect for putting it on the stanchions right here, and as well as these plastic sliders which go on the inside. Alright, so now onto the assembly. You want to clean out the inside of those stanchions and grab your spring with this little black piece and put some grease on it. Alright, so this is me talking for the future. When you put your rod in, you want to put your bolts in first, then you want to put in your plastic slider, and then put the white thing on top. Otherwise the bolt won't go through this piece and you'll be stuck. Now these have some play inside of the stanchion, so feel free to use some thicker grease on here, and make sure to get it on here and inside the stanchion as well. Then grab your little white piece, slap it on, and put it through. Alright, so now once you got that in, you want to lay it down on like a flat surface so the rod doesn't come out. And then you want to grab one of your little clear washers if it's still alive. If it's cracked, don't worry about it. And then you want to get your clip and you want to put it in this groove. As you can see, there's a little groove right there. You want to get this and pop it in. So slide in your little clear washer. Make sure it goes above the little groove so you have enough room. Now the way to put one of these clips on is you want to put one finger over here and grab some pliers. Alright, so once you got the clip in, just make sure it's sitting right in that groove. Grab your boots, make sure the insides of them are clean, and clean down the stanchions with some brake cleaner and slide them on. You can also put just a tiny bit of this honey stuff on the inside of this lip here, because sometimes it can be hard to get it up. Alright, so when you grease up the lowers, you want to use some of this Slick Honey stuff on the inside of that bearing right there. You want to get some on the stanchion as well as on the lower. Now you want to make sure your boots are seated right. You make sure they're seated all the way around, all the way down up to about this groove, and just push them up to make a vacuum, and they'll stick onto the lower. So now you want to grab your lowers and push them up as high as they go. Then you want to grab your long 5 and screw it in to attach the stanchions to the lowers. Alright, so once you got that screwed in, make sure to use the Shrek with the vice grip and the screwdriver, or you can put the arch on if you want. You want to make sure these bolts are tight because you don't want your lowers coming off while you're riding. Alright, so once you got it tightened down, just make sure they're not going to fall off. And if you remember those springs, that's actually what they're for. They're for the top out. You can feel they bounce up and down a little bit. Alright, then grab your elastomers. You don't have to grease up the sides. I feel like that's kind of overhyped in the fork rebuild community. Just grease up the top, grease up the bottom, because it doesn't actually touch the stanchion, and just plop it in. Then grab your top cap, screw it on. Alright, now so putting on the arch, I really recommend using Loctite for this, because the lowers are magnesium, the arch is magnesium, and if you strip those threads, you're going to be absolutely done. At the very least, I just say use some on the brake bosses, but other than that, you should be fine. Alright, so there we have it, a fully rebuilt RockShox Quadra 5. So remember guys, don't store your forks high up in your garage or the elastomers will degrade. Make sure to subscribe or all your forks and derailleurs will break, guaranteed. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.